Good morning, everyone. I just want to say thank you so much for being here. My name is Kirsten Burke, and I'm the director of Nordic Innovation House, and we are so pleased to have every single one of the people that is in this room here today. We know a lot of you have traveled far and wide, and we really can't tell you how much we appreciate it. This whole conference is a bit of a labor of love for the 5 country teams to put this together. And I think we all feel pretty good about the fact that we brought together some really incredible people who are here in this room today, and we are so grateful and honored that you're here. If there's any questions that you might have or anything you need to know, the staff members have a yellow sticker on their name tag, so you can find us and ask us for any help that you might need. And other than that, we hope that you all have a really wonderful day, that you enjoy it, and that you're able to really take something away from this. We're going to turn this over to Rebecca and Marcus, who will take it away, but I just want to say at the end of the day, we'll send out a little survey. If you could let us know how it's going so we can make sure that this is getting better and better every year. And have a wonderful day, everyone. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Kirsten, for that warm welcome. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Bifrost 2025. So my name is Rebecca Scheel, and I'm the director for Invest in Norway Americas at Innovation Norway. That is Norway's Bank for Entrepreneurs.
My name is Marcus Rönngen Leo, and I represent Sweden-US Green Transition Initiative, a collaboration between Business Sweden, the Swedish Innovation Agency, the Energy Agency, as well as our embassy in Washington, D.C.
That's a mouthful. Well, as an American who has lived in Denmark and even married to a Dane, I know, pity me, and now works for Norway in Silicon Valley, I'm often asked, how do you work with the Nordics and how do you make friends with the Nordics? So I'm going to let you in on a little secret if you guys are ready for it. All right, I sense you're ready. So to befriend the Norwegians, you want to make jokes about the Swedes. Right? Is that accurate? To befriend the Danes, it's a little different. While drinking, you want to make jokes about the Swedes. Now, for the Finns, it's a little bit more complicated. You're going to be in the sauna and make jokes about the Swedes. But how are you going to make friends with the Swedes? Well, just tell them that you drive a Volvo. But jokes aside, the Nordic countries share more similarities than differences. And here in Silicon Valley, we understand that we're stronger when we work together to promote Nordic values, countries, and companies. And in recent days, the importance of that solidarity and collaboration has become more critical than ever.
Yeah, and when we hosted the very first Bifrost Summit, the invasion of Ukraine had just taken place less than a month earlier. At that time, it was hard for anyone to even imagine that when we do the 4th edition of Bifrost Summit, the war would still be ongoing. We know that the world is increasingly uncertain. Uncertainty is increasing, and what we know will be constant, and what will shape our future is change. So for us, it's more important now than ever that we push towards this change of compassion and empathy.
Thank you. And so for those of you that know me, you know I like to color coordinate. So I like to wear red, white, and blue as an American, also the Norwegian flag. I have a Norwegian flag scarf that I like to wear, a pin. Today I'm wearing my Nordic flag sunglasses. Sometimes when I'm feeling a bit frisky, I sort of wear everything and I look like a big Norwegian flag. Apologies to the Swedes on that one. But today I'm representing the Nordics. And so I have my Nordic branded sunglasses, as I said, and I want to acknowledge that we're in this different context, as Marcus said. So to represent our Nordic solidarity, I'm going to exchange my Norwegian sort of shirt, navy, and I'm going to wear, apparently, what matches the chairs here, and wear the colors of the Ukrainian flag.
It's because you're a spy. But yeah, so as we look ahead for the next Bifrost Summit, let's continue to strengthen collaboration within the Nordics and between the Nordics and the US. Partnerships are meant to be built and something that we depend upon. And together we can drive even greater innovation and impact and hopefully create change for the better.
Now I'm surprised Marcus didn't mention the fact that now I probably look more like a Swede than ever.
But you are. That's because, like I said, she's a Swedish spy.
So there's not a lot we can tackle in this room, so we're going to leave everything outside that we can't change, and we're going to really focus on what the Bifrost really firmly believes is about the collaboration.
Yes. So yeah, collaboration is the word of today, and collaboration is what has shaped Bifrost Summit. It's built upon the foundation of collaborations between the Nordic countries. It's also built upon the collaboration of the Nordics with the US, and of course something that we want to continue with.
So we'd like to thank all of our sponsors, partners, and participating companies, and for you, the participants, for believing in this collaboration and for helping us widen the bridge to the Nordic companies and people in the Silicon Valley region.
Great. And before we dive into today's program, I'd like to share some important and practical information to make sure that you get the most out of your Bifrost Summit here today. First of all, you can find the full schedule of the event on the QR code on your name tags. And also up on screen, there's supposed to be a QR code coming soon. And of course, you can visit the website, bifrost.com. Wi-Fi, there is a guest Wi-Fi connection, and you will find the password on those boards up on the desk. And when it comes to networking, I urge you all to make good use of the breaks and also, of course, of the reception that we will have later. Don't be shy to talk to each other, and especially don't be shy to reach out to the speakers and all the experts that we have in the room. For social media, we have hashtag Bifrost Summit. So please post whatever you think is, of course, everything is great during today. So post everything. And then, like I said, last but not least, we have the counselor networking reception starting at 5. And it will be, if you follow the maze-like corridor down to our left, you will also pass a couple of restrooms. And we also have exits over there and one right behind you.
So let us take a deep breath and let's embark on a voyage of discovery. Not on a plane, which was my metaphor for last year, given the current situation. Let's be on a ship, a battery hybrid cruise ship that's going to take us around the Nordics and Silicon Valley with a fantastic program covering topics such as investment, AI, semiconductors, and dual use. We're going to hear from the best Nordic startups in this space. And if you stick around to the end, we're going to kick off an exciting Nordic project with all of you today.
And great. So we have today's first speaker coming up. She is the creator of the acclaimed podcast, The Innovator Storytellers Show, and which has engaged some of the world's most visionary business leaders, as well as C-suite executives. Please, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcome up on stage Susanne Lindner, CEO of Innovation Storyteller.
We're embarking on a world today where we're going to be talking about storytelling. Why do we start a conference talking about storytelling when you want to dive deep into quantum, right? Isn't that why we're all here? My feeling is, and my contention is for the last 30 years, that if we are trying to introduce new things and changes, and most of all behavior change, it starts with a story. It starts with something human that we can all relate to, and most importantly, that we can pass on to other people. And so I want to take you on a little storytelling journey. I will be raising some eyebrows today, so we're all adults in the room, I hope? Yes? Okay. So let's dive into the conversation. I work with a lot of scientists in large corporations and organizations around the world, and I had the good fortune of speaking with a team of fractographers at Corning Glass. Has anyone met a fractographer before? So a fractographer is responsible for determining how glass breaks. I didn't know this was a PhD level course of study that my 7 or 8-year-olds could have embarked on at one point. But a fractographer determines when your head hits a windshield, whether or not that windshield pops out, whether or not it bends, or whether it breaks into 1,000 little marbles so you don't get shards of glass in your neck and it becomes part of your anatomy. So I went up to Corning Glass, one of the largest glass manufacturers in the world, and they said, we've developed a new glass, and we're going to be presenting it to the CEO of Corning. Can you help us? I said, I'd love to. Show me your deck. 59 slides. And the first 2 slides look like this. How many of you remember taking chemistry back in high school or college and had to dismantle one of these? So they started to explain in deep detail. Does anyone know what this is? It's the electron model for sand. Exciting. In the middle of their presentation to me, as I was fighting off the yawns, one of the fractographers became an aunt. And Annie, sister in Ohio, had a baby. And we were passing around her phone, oohing and awing at this cute little baby, and then we got back to the business of fractographing, I guess. Anyway, I said, Annie, show me the picture of that baby one more time. And I said, wow, just imagine those tiny little capillaries going through that baby right now, and that pancreas and how it's evolving in this moment, and all of those motor neurons that are just firing in the brain as it welcomes itself here to Earth. And they looked at me like I had 3 heads. And I go, oh, too granular, huh? And I said, yes, and that is the worst sand joke ever. So this is what happens sometimes when we're talking about emerging technologies, is we get super granular and super fixated on product features and how we built it, or we zoom out way too far, and it gets just absolutely lost on us, the point that we're trying to make. And so innovation storytelling is about taking it down to the audience level so that we can get excited, engaged, and change our behavior from how we used to do things and how we do things today and tomorrow. So I have to tell you that everyone in this room is capable of becoming an innovation storyteller. This was not my original calling. My last job before getting into this line of work was as a field epidemiologist at the Centers for Disease Control, tracking variant and resistant strains of HIV. And prior to that, I was a bit of a revolutionary. At 19, I hitchhiked through 5 countries and 2 war zones because I thought I wanted to take up arms with the Sandinistas in Nicaragua. As I got closer to the front lines and chickened out completely, I realized that that was probably not for me, and thankfully I had the ability to leave that war zone. And I decided instead to fight a different war, and that was the war on HIV. I moved to Thailand and lived there for 3 years, working on HIV with Thai and Hill tribe populations. I'm an anthropologist by training. And so when I first got to Thailand in 1994, this is what I saw. 1 in 6 sexually active people were HIV positive, and this fine gentleman was here to haunt your family after you passed away from HIV. This was a shock and awe technique on the highways and byways of northern Thailand that was extremely effective. In fact, we saw HIV infection rates drop dramatically over the next 6 months by looking at that terrifying face. Does anybody read Thai in the room? Awesome, so I can make this up. So this effectively says get AIDS and die. And the only tools I had at my disposal, my breakthrough innovation in northern Thailand, was the condom. So for all of you innovators in the room, how old is the condom? How long has it been with us here in human history? What is your guess? Just shout it out for me. How old is the condom? Not the one in your glove compartment. How old is the condom? Roman times. So give me a number. 2,000 years. Anyone else? We'll do the Price is Right. Any other guesses? How old is the condom? 500 years. Anyone else? 1,000 years. 10,000 years old. A breakthrough here in human history, right? 10,000 years old. First archaeological evidence is in France, of course. In the Grotte du Carambel, there is actually a cave painting of what we believe to be a condom. We don't know if it was a public health message or if someone was bragging about last night. But just last year, archaeological evidence was found in the pyramids, in one of the pyramids, of actual condoms. So they were preserved that long. They have been with us that long. And yet, that was my only tool to stop a deadly virus. So I want to introduce you to my customers. For my project, I was assigned to work in the brothels of northern Thailand, and I had 3 core audiences where I was selling this breakthrough technology: mama-sans who owned the brothels, customers who came there, and the sex workers themselves. And when we asked the question, why are you coming to the brothel today? This question was for the mama-san to make money. For the customer, it was certainly, well, I'll leave it to your imagination, but let's just say pleasure. And for the sex workers themselves, they said, I just want to be safe. I just want to survive. As an anthropologist, my desire was to apply the techniques of anthropology and understand what could we do to change the story, because HIV infection rates were climbing again after these terror campaigns, and it wasn't working. We had to change the narrative. And so we asked this one fundamental question: how could I make my customers the heroes of their respective story? And when we asked this question and said, imagine yourself the hero of the story, what would you tell us? And the mama-san said, I want to have the best reputation in this town for the cleanest brothel possible. The customer said, I want to be able to protect my wife and future children from getting HIV. And the sex worker, most surprisingly, said, I want to be in control of my own destiny. Well, I'm a public health worker in northern Thailand on the border of Burma, making $300 a month. How can I affect her destiny? How can I change her life? And we got together and we said, what if we could teach you a new craft? And we taught them entrepreneurship, fitting that we're here at NASDAQ today. So we were in the Golden Triangle. We taught chicken raising, pig raising, duck raising, this girl from the Bronx, and gem cutting, computer skills, secretarial skills that would change their lives. And as a result, we saw HIV infection rates plummet pretty dramatically over the next 6 months because people saw themselves in a new future, and it was our job to paint a picture of that future, frankly, as it is for all of you. If you are embarking in new and emerging technologies, can you begin to paint a picture, at least in your mind, before you share it, what the future looks like for everyone else that you're asking to follow you into that unknown? So let's talk about why stories actually work in this work. Stories are so powerful because it is the human operating system. We actually aren't built for Excel spreadsheets and 3 bullets. Shocking. The human brain has evolved to understand stories and transmit them to someone else. By the way, that part, the most important part of storytelling is, will it spread? And so Stanford has already done the research for us. In fact, facts wrapped in story are 22 times more powerful than facts alone. So if you're just bullets on the table, you are going to be forgotten within, Stanford says, 6 minutes of leaving your meeting. That's why I think of storytelling as the greatest executive productivity tool ever. It means you don't have to handle that call that says, hey, you know in that meeting we had, can you send me back over those points again? I've totally forgotten, and then we'll have another meeting to talk about what we talked about at the last meeting? Yeah, story is the answer to that. Now, why is it that story actually works scientifically? It's emotion that actually makes people connect to the story. When I'm telling you a story of what it's like to work in a brothel in Thailand, you are feeling a certain kind of way. You are feeling an emotion. And that story, as a result, generates either a memory, hope not, and a story that you are telling yourself. And when I am talking, you are connecting and clicking with me. That goes into the filing cabinet of your brain, and you are pulling out a story and a feeling that actually goes through the body. That's how we embody a story. You feel it. So when I reference the 5 senses, or when I reference a memory, it's clicking in your body. And that's why I do it. So if you want to tell great stories, know that you are also responsible for the neurotransmitters and the chemistry happening in the brain of your listener. All of you get to decide to be mad scientists and figure out what you'd like your listener to feel. In fact, I would implore you, the next time you're giving a presentation, having a meeting, looking at your own meeting agenda, ask yourself, what do I want my listeners to hear? What do I want them to feel? And you decide which neurotransmitters you are going to release in the human brain. You decide. So if I'm trying to get someone really excited about something new, I'm going to do everything in my power to start off with adrenaline. It's why every James Bond movie starts off with James running across the screen. We don't know where. We don't know why. Someone's chasing him. We're excited. Starts off with adrenaline. if you are talking about layoffs, if you're talking about terrifying new cyber threats. Know you're starting your meeting with adrenaline, and by the way, you're responsible for mitigating that fear by the end of your meeting so that people are feeling maybe a bit of dopamine or a bit of serotonin or some endorphins by the end of your conversation. You decide as the storyteller. But the most powerful story you can tell is a goodwill story. It literally lights up the brain. It changes our brain chemistry. What's a goodwill story? One where you say, I'm here to make your life better. The technology, the breakthrough, the idea, the strategy is here to make your life better. That's a goodwill story. So think about the technologies that you're working on and ask yourself the question, how is it making my listeners' life better? It comes across in three ways when we tell a goodwill story. We have less stress, we have greater reward, and the most important one, greater caregiving-related activity. For us anthropologists out there, caregiving is considered one of the cornerstones of civil society. It's when in ancient times, in our tribal life, I might say, eat this mushroom, don't eat this mushroom, it'll kill you, and this other mushroom may be saved for Saturday night. Yeah. So in today's world, it's a Yelp review. It's an Amazon review where you say, eat at this restaurant, don't eat at this restaurant, definitely don't take your mother here, she'll be complaining all weekend long, right? That is caregiving-related activity, and it changes because it means we're generating new content to help someone else. Us giving a review is very much rooted in our society to help one another. And technologies are designed to do just that. So we also know that when we talk about technologies, frankly, me as the founder, as the creator of a new technology, I don't have nearly as much weight as the people who spread my message. So innovation profits, I'm asking you to think about who are your early adopters, who are your followers, and how will you get them to spread your message? Because we know among millennials, now the biggest group in our labor force today, they are user-generated content is more influential on purchases, it's more memorable, and it's more trusted. So it's not enough just for you to have a good story, we have to pre-plan how other people will spread it. So how do we tell an emerging technology story? You know, I was very nostalgic coming back to San Francisco because I remember walking around here during Internet 1.0. Are there any Internet 1.0 veterans? Yeah, good times. Being in Palo Alto last night, I had lots of memories of VC pitches going terribly awry. But back in 1999, everyone was a revolutionary, not the kind I was, but a revolutionary. Every founder was revolutionizing some industry, and it was super exciting. As we moved into the Airbnb worlds and the Uber worlds, we moved into the sharing economy and the democratization of technology and access to all different kinds of platforms that we never had before. But I would venture to say that we are now in the quantum era. We are now in a time of technology where we are leapfrogging previous technologies in a way that for us humans is very hard to keep up. Ask your mothers if they know anything about, how many of you here are the help desk for your respective parents? Anyone? Oh. Things are moving at such speed that we are leapfrogging, and we need the stories in order for our human minds to catch up, and it is not easy. So I want to give you what I refer to as my 7 steps to innovation glory, how to tell an innovation story, especially if you're trying to sell it to people. So let's walk through. First of all, you must know before you ever start writing your story that is the listener that is the hero, not you, not the founder, not the creator, not even those folks that you admire who helped get you here. The listener is the hero because they're the ones who will spread your story to other people of consequence. So how will you make sure that they understand what you're sharing with them? Find out what matters to them. And that comes through shared history. So before you start writing the slide, what does your listener have in common? Have you both come from? And I'm talking about the good, the bad, and the ugly in our technology journeys. Because we actually bind with one another, we bond with one another more over the tragedy than the triumph. So even if you're in a large company trying to promote new ideas, where have you struggled together? Bringing about new concepts and new ideas. What is your shared history? Because frankly, I'm not getting in a car with someone and moving into the future unless you can tell me we're both coming from the same place. Step 2 is called the shift. The shift is the why this, why now question. Why should any of us be considering this new breakthrough technology that you're describing? Why should we consider bringing it into our enterprises? What is the shift that's happening? And it comes across in 2 ways. Number 1 is the macro shift. Things that are going on outside of our control that are impacting all of us. Maybe it's COVID or climate change or work from home, some of those big things that have changed for us, or even huge formulas that are changing the technological landscape. The other is the micro shift, leadership, strategy, direction, new markets, closing other markets. These are the way that human beings are interacting with one another inside of the bubbles that we operate in. But we have to ask this question, why this, why now? And by the way, on either side of the shift, there will be winners and there will be losers. And by the way, the status quo is always the loser in innovation. So think about it. What would it mean to sit still and do nothing? What would it mean to take a leap into this new place? If you're telling an innovation story, this is a place to give me data and proof, right at the shift. When we are trying to sell something new, we often have to look backwards in order to move forwards. Really important. And so we use a technique called breadcrumbing. If I'm talking about quantum, I might go all the way back to the theoretical changes that took place with Richard Feynman, right? I might go all the way back to the 80s and talk about how far we've come. I'm trying to show a trajectory over time, a shift in mindset, a shift in resources and budget about how we've changed. So from a quantum standpoint, goodness knows, the Nordics have had an incredible impact on where we are today. Places like IQM in Finland and Chalmers University in Sweden, we are really looking at how the shift has taken place. And we are now in this new place. Your job as a storyteller is to say we are living in a different era, and you get to describe it. Now, once you've taken people backwards, we now want to take them forward. If you're trying to get people to buy into your new idea, show them heaven. Say, this new technology isn't going to do this today, but in a mere 2 to 3 to 5 years from now, it's going to look like. And you ask your listener, imagine if. Imagine if we could go into this future together. What would it look like? What would heaven look like for you? This is where you get your listener really participating with you and imagining a joint future together, not just yours. Next is you bring the magic tools. This is where you actually tell the customer, your listener, the CEO, the CFO about your technology. And finally, who are your adopters and allies who will go into this future with you? Find the obstacles. Ask people, what would stop you from saying yes to this brilliant technology? What would stop you? Because when someone is vulnerable, now you have the chance to be of service and to be of help. You're no longer just a storyteller. You're introducing something new and brilliant to them. You're helping them overcome the difficulty of saying yes. And finally, an innovative story requires that both of you win. So if you're trying to bring forward a new technology, tell them what's in it for you and what's in it for them, how the world will change. So I'm just going to conclude by saying, I want to tell you a little bit more about those fractographers up at Corning Glass. We wound up taking that 59-page slide presentation and we got it down to 11 slides. And the conversation we began with looked like this. Imagine if you could move out of your office at the end of the day and slide into your Tesla. There you'd sit down, relax, recline your seat, because your car is self-driving, and now your windshield becomes your 45-inch flat-screen television, where you recline and watch the second half of Bridget Jones' Diary that you left on your TV, or you finish up those last 3 emails that you left in your draft folder. This is the future of the new self-driving Tesla in the year 2024. And it's all thanks to this new glass we created that you've never seen before. So, with that, if you would like, happy to share with you these 5 steps to innovation storytelling. Feel free to just take the QR code. You won't be added to any mailing list. And you can go and retrieve that and start creating your own stories. And I will just leave you with this one final note, because we can't tell an innovation story in San Francisco without bringing our friend Steve Jobs to the table. And that is, the most powerful person in the world is the storyteller who sets the agenda and the future of a generation that's yet to come. And that is all of you. Thank you so much.
All right, so we have our second speaker of the day, focusing on just tech. So the inequality between the sexes within tech is well known. Less than 2% of the venture capital is distributed to all female-led companies, while 86% approximately goes to all male-led teams. Yet, all female-led teams give a 36% higher return on investments. So what is the full potential of technology when unlocking untapped potential? Our next speaker, she is the program director of acceleration of deep tech startups at the Swedish innovation agency Vinnova. Please, ladies and gentlemen, welcome up on stage Moa Persdotter.
Finally, Bifrost Summit. So nice to be here, and thank you for having the opportunity to talk to you today. My name is Moa Persdotter, working at the Swedish Innovation Agency as the Program Director of Acceleration of Deep Tech Startups. I've been working in the startup community in Sweden for almost 6 years. And I'm here today to talk about emerging technologies and diversity from kind of another perspective than you might be used to. There is a goodwill story here to be told. And I hope that I, with this very short session, can raise a sense of emergency, but also for you to see the full potential of technology itself. Because we are facing not just complicated challenges that knows no borders, but actually very complex ones. Pandemic, climate crisis, a population that's getting older, and wars. This makes us the need to think and to act differently. We need to innovate the way we innovate. And we need to do this together. And we need to make full use of not just our population, but of our technology itself. And at the same time as we have this crisis, we have the fastest development of technology ever. Together, this creates a perfect storm of uncertainty. Uncertainty that gives us a lot of possibilities and a lot of challenges. So after the Draghi report, EU decided on a specific strategic technology areas. And after that, Sweden got a governmental assignment to do the same. And we decided to focus on these critical and emerging technology areas in Sweden, where we need to get a better focus and to get a better position. But what I think is very interesting, that was also stated in this report, is that Sweden, and not just Sweden, the whole Nordic region, has a tradition and an expertise in working with gender equality and ethics. So in my work, I look into what will happen if we combine the technology skills and this tradition of working with gender equality and ethics. What bold ideas can we then develop to power our future? We actually tried this at Vinnova. We focused on the field of AI, and we said, what would happen if we, instead of talking about the risks with AI when it comes to the possibilities of actually not just increasing, but scaling inequalities in our society, if built on skewed and biased data? What would happen if we instead asked, well, could we use AI to scale equality and equal rights and more inclusive societies? Is that even possible? Could we use technology in that kind of way? So we funded 2 reports that tried this theory, and they said, yes, it's actually possible. Okay, so now we have a report saying in theory it's possible. So we decided to team up with different kind of actors from the Nordic region and America to launch 2 different hackathons. And we said, we'll give you 6 gender equality goals that are not just the national Swedish gender equality goals, but they are actually global. So from the beginning, there is a possibility to have an international market if we get AI solutions that can solve these challenges. And what do you think happened? Well, we now have a full portfolio with AI solutions that can be used to scale equality in our societies. They have proven record of being able to be commercialized. And just to give you 2 examples. In our portfolio, we have an AI tool that can do fairer and better decisions on what startups to invest in than a general VC investor. As Marcus said, we are super biased when investing in companies, and we know that only 1% of the private capital goes to female-led startups. With this AI tool, we can actually solve part of that problem, and on the same time, giving a higher return on investment to our investors. It's a win-win, just as Susan said that you should point out when talking, right? Another example is that we have an AI tool that's based on data from wearables in finding what kind of systems you have as a woman when it comes to cardiovascular diseases. Because as it is right now, these medical treatments are based on men's data. And that means that women do not get the same medical treatment. But with this solution, we are making the health system more equal, and we're actually saving lives. So again, it's a win-win. This is just 2 examples. We have a whole portfolio, and we are still continuing to find these kind of impactful tech solutions on how to improve our societies to become more inclusive and gender equal. We've gathered knowledge since 2019 when we launched this program, but now we need to scale this knowledge. We need to collaborate international because there's so much potential in this kind of approach. And I haven't even talked about the underrepresentation of minorities and women in STEM and tech and startup teams, because with this approach, we're actually reaching out to another kind of target group when it comes to entrepreneurs. So instead, you can talk about the potential of these technologies and still be able to talk about gender equalities when it comes to representation. So it's a whole new innovative approach when talking about the combination of emerging technologies and gender equality. But you can also scale knowledge by giving tools and best or promising practices to the startup and innovation landscape. So on our website, we have launched 2 tools, one that is named Nova and one that is named Intersectional Design Cards, based on Swedish and American research on how to criticize your technical development process, your startup idea, or your investment strategy to make sure that you build more inclusive tech solutions, you untap potential, and you reach new customers and markets. Again, it's a win-win and it makes business sense. We're also piloting in our national incubator program when we assess our startups being part of that program, how well they are doing on not just customer, business, and team readiness, but actually sustainability readiness level. And we define sustainability not just as the ecological one, but as economic and social sustainability, meaning that we assess how well these startups are doing in terms of combining the technical development with the ethics and the gender equality aspects, which also make business sense, because when you're applying for EU funds from Horizon Europe, this question is now mandatory by default. So the startup teams that can answer this question or showing how they integrated this perspective in their research or innovation proposal will be the ones that gets the fund. And it's great funds coming from the European Innovation Council and the Horizon Europe program. In the end of February, we had this discussion at the Tech Arena in Stockholm, together with Sony Startup Acceleration Program, that actually placed their office in Lund, south of Sweden, not just because it's a short way over to Denmark, but actually because they know that we have this tradition of working with this ethics when it comes to innovation management. And in the middle here, we have the Swedish-American professor Erika Jónsson, based in Linköping University. And I know we have a delegation from Linköping here, so it feels extra fun to talk about this today. And she will be running our new initiative that we call Just Tech, Doing Good with AI. It's a think tank where we want to collect more examples of this kind of technologies. So yes, please bring out your smartphones, place your camera towards this QR code, and you will enter a Google form where you can send us examples of these kind of technologies, or maybe you have examples of technical solutions that would benefit from this kind of perspective. Because in this think tank, we would like to scale this knowledge and keep on having these critical discussions. And we have in the advisory board not just Swedish, but experts from the Nordic countries in robotics, AI, and machine learning, looking into this together with experts in psychology and gender. From August, I will move and join the Swedish team at the Nordic Innovation House in Palo Alto, and I very much look forward to know you and to see how we can collaborate. What could happen if we could combine this Nordic expertise with the cadence and the secret sauce of Silicon Valley? How can we together make it possible to think differently and do things differently? Thank you for listening, and talk more.
Thank you, Mua. All right, we're moving on to our third speaker, dual-use technology. Yeah. Well, especially now for all of us coming from the Nordics and Europe, having Sweden and Finland's recently joining NATO, the intersection between commercial innovations and defense applications has never been more relevant than now for our region. And to help us better understand why dual use is more important than ever, we're joined by the CEO of Videntifier, a leading company in visual recognition technology. He holds a PhD in AI from Stanford. He is a board member of the NATO Innovation Fund. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome up on stage Ari Jónsson.
So good morning, everybody. Great pleasure to be here with you, and thank you for this kind introduction. So let's start out with, somebody cheered here for dual-use technology. Glad to hear that. There are some who actually know the parlance and the language. But in the simplest term, dual-use technology is technology, and we typically are talking about advanced technology as opposed to something mundane that has applications in the security sector, as well as commercial applications for companies, businesses, individuals, etc. Now, let's be clear what we're talking about here. When I say security sector, I use that word because we mean more than defense. The way we often talk about this, and this is one half of the dual use as opposed to commercial, is talk about DSR. It's defense, the typical military applications, deterrence, capabilities, etc. Security, these are things like keeping our cyber information safe, bio, safety, etc., etc. And the resilience, and that is just as important as the other two elements. That is our ability to keep our infrastructures, our energy, our water, all the things that make our society work, to keep those safe as well. So it's not just military applications, but they certainly are a part of it. Now, I have been involved in dual use all my life. I decided to do a PhD down the peninsula at Stanford University, and very soon I got involved in projects that were funded by various military organizations, DARPA, the Advanced Research Program Agency, Rome Air Force Labs, and more. And then I worked at NASA for 10 years. Space applications, whole lot of dual use applicability. And then when I stepped out of NASA and got involved in a startup, that turned out also to be a dual use application used by security agencies as well as commercial entities. Then 2 years ago, I joined the NATO Innovation Fund and have the honor of being a board member on that fund and actually help in some of the steps of setting up the funds. And so what the fund is doing is investing in dual use to both get the returns on the fund, it's a VC fund, but also to make sure that the alliance is safer in the future than it is today. So I want to share with you here today how important all these elements are and what opportunities there are for all of us here to contribute to this. Now, first of all, to understand dual-use technology, let's take an example. This is a classical example, the GPS. This development actually started with a challenge from DARPA. They said, would it not be wonderful if you could accurately get your location for whatever use you want, magically, preferably with something that could be somewhere else, like in space, and everybody go out and see what we can do with this. For those of you who are my age, you remember that the initial version of GPS was very much a military use GPS. The military could get full accuracy. The rest of us got initially 20, 30 meters, 100 feet, something like that. And we were always told, if you're going to develop any applications for this, be prepared that we turn it off if we ever have any trouble. The world is different today. We have access to the GPS. It's been a very successful technology. The number of commercial applications is infinite, and most of us couldn't even think about how we lived our lives if we didn't have accurate information about everything we do, everywhere we are, where we moved, how much we walked, how many miles we ran, etc. Now, I want to talk about an inflection point, a change that really happened. So in the 20th century, back when I was born, the development of dual use was very different. So the classical approach was that it was led by the government. It was led by the military. It was led by some government agency that went out and said, we need some technology. We're going to develop it for our purposes, and then it can be commercialized later on. The space race was an excellent example of that. The number of technologies we've gotten from NASA's development through the years are incredible. But initially, it was to make sure that we had the leadership in space. The original jet engine, which is a tool that got us here as fast and economically as it possibly could, was originally developed only for the military. And our favorite tool of all, the internet, was originally just for defense purposes. It then became a commercially used tool. So the classical approach, and this is what I got involved in many times when I was younger, is there's a challenge problem out there. Sometimes it was a badly hidden military problem, and then somebody worked on it, sometimes in secret, sometimes in public, and then the solution was applied, sometimes publicly, and sometimes very much in secret. Now, this century is different. If we look at where the drivers for technology development are today, they're not stemming from the government. They're not stemming from the military. Almost all the very high-tech development that we see today in this century is driven by private enterprises, primarily funded by private money. Now, this is a change that nobody noticed for a long time, and I'll share with you my opinion of why. But AI is an excellent example of this. I started working in AI when really there was the government and the big institutions that came out there and said, can you develop solutions for us using AI to solve a bunch of problems? Today, private companies are developing AI, and to be completely honest, we often find that government agencies are actually surprised at what it can do, and they're struggling to catch up, both with what it can do and how do we actually manage it and put a lid on it if needed. Now, as I said, we didn't notice for a long time. And not because we were just all slacking off and having a good time. We've been busy with a whole bunch of other problems, climate change, global warming, the need for better sustainability solutions, pandemics, etc. But we had a rude awakening a few years ago. For the first time, in Europe since World War II, an entity, a country decided to get its mean by a straightforward military invasion into an independent country. And this really turned upside down our view of our security, and we had to start really thinking fast, how can we ensure our capability to defend ourselves in the future? So, we're facing new situation in security, but it's not just in terms of straightforward military operations. We're also seeing cyber attacks, and especially we've seen those in the Nordics lately, attacks on our infrastructure such as the deep sea cables. So, what can we do? The key, and this goes also for the second half of the 20th century, has been to have a technological advantage that deters and makes sure that we are prepared. What is different this time around is that technological know-how and the capability to develop solutions lies with private enterprises, not so much the military and the government leadership anymore. That is a really different scenario for all of us, for startups, for investors, and for the governments. So, some might say at this point, great, perfect. Isn't this all very good? We're a startup, we have great technology, we've been looking at customers in the commercial space for a while, and now we have, security forces, governments, and everybody just lining up as customers as well. Good, right? Not quite that simple. I don't know if some of you have noticed, but governments are not the quickest entities on the planet. They are slow. Decisions take forever. And there's unbelievable bureaucracy sometimes involved. A startup on a shoestring budget, even developing the best technology that is out there, cannot survive humming and hawing, endless paperwork for years and years on end before they actually get that customer. We also have a lot of 20th century infrastructure also in place. There's a general go-to talk to the old guys. We have sometimes had problems with investors not being quite ready to invest in these kinds of dual-use technologies. And then one of the things, and I'm going to get back to this later, just be aware of, when startups get involved in security-related applications, sometimes we get into a little bit of sensitive areas. And so, for instance, here in the US, there's a regulation called ITAR, International Trade in Arms Regulation, and it allows the United States government to basically sequester technology and not allow it for export and not allow it for use. European countries, including Germany, also have regulations like this. So this is something also to watch out for. Now, something needs to happen to make this all work out. And we are definitely not alone, but it's in this context that we set up the NATO Innovation Fund. So it's an independent VC fund. It has about $1.1 billion from 24 allied nations intended to invest in deep tech that can help our security, help us keep the alliance safe, and have a return on the investment. But the fund has more purposes than that. Specifically, it's also there to help its portfolio companies actually break through the bureaucracy, actually get to the government contracts, actually make sure that their technology is adopted and find customers. Furthermore, the third element of what we do is to increase the capacity for advanced development overall. That includes investing in funds that invest in deep tech, to work with others, to do capacity building, etc. Now, we focus on a number of key technologies. All of them are deep tech technologies. And maybe the best way to understand what kinds of technologies we're looking at is to give you some of the examples of the early investments that we made. We've invested in a company that is developing lighter fiber composites than has been possible before, up to 40% lighter. This company had already started talking to the automobile industry, especially the electrical car industry, about wouldn't it be great if you could have much, much lighter bodies on the cars and all kinds of infrastructure in the cars and make lighter cars. And it would be better and cheaper and get more range and all good. Then the airplane manufacturers looked at them as like, hey, that's a good idea. We could also use that technology. So classical, deep tech, dual-use technology that can have impact in both cases for the positive. We're invested in a company that is bringing AI calculations to the edge, i.e. drones, smartphones, autonomous vehicles, really small-scale devices can have really intensive AI on them. Autonomous robotics, that's a given for civilian and defensive applications. Space operations, launch capability, operations, etc. Quantum development. Somebody asked me when quantum is going to become, a big deal, and it's very clear. I can give you a very exact answer. It's somewhere between 3 and 30 years. And finally, of course, autonomous and advanced drone development and operations. Now, as I said, we don't just do investments in companies. We also invest in funds that can help bring capacity levels and capability to different regions to develop deep tech. We have set up pathways, and we actually have invested in the capability for us to help portfolio companies not just get to the contracts with governments and military, but also to bring them in earlier and allow them to do tests and validation so that the pathway to actual adoption is there. And finally, we're working very hard to get obstacles out of the way so that co-investment in these kinds of technologies is increased. And this includes changing some regulations, changing some attitudes, and working very closely with funds all within the alliance. Now, as I said, we're not alone. In-Q-Tel in the United States has been doing this for a long time. NSIF in the UK is doing this. And new funds are being stood up in, for example, Norway and other places. The world that we live in today is really, really different from the 20th century. It's even really, really different from just 5 or 10 years ago. We know that, and we feel it. We are developing some amazing advanced technology that is changing the world. Everything around is changing. It's not just AI and autonomy. It's quantum. It's biotechnology that is really breakthrough. We have not seen for a long, long time so much and such fast development of technology. But at the same time, we're faced with real challenges in terms of defense and security. And our goal is to bring these two together to make sure that we can ensure our security, change the world for the better, and startups and investors make some money at the same time. So what does it all mean? For startups, this really is an opportunity, and especially for those who are doing more advanced technology development, there is more receptiveness for this than there has been in the past. There are new funding sources. There are new customers coming online. That's all good. And there are new pathways to actually vet your solution and prove that it works. But it's not without challenges. There are challenges in working with the government, and they're going to be there for some time, even though we're trying to address those. And keep in mind also that in some cases, the rights of nation, the security, etc., may step in and have an impact on where you're going, so be aware of it. And for investors, it's the same thing. All of a sudden, there is real opportunity and deeper and more advanced technology than we have been seeing in the last 5 to 10 years. And there are really new, well-paying customers on the horizon that can take on advanced technology at a much greater scale and over a longer period of time than we might see just from the commercial private industry. So that's all good. But again, you have to keep your eyes open, and you have to understand what comes with these technologies and these startups. Now, I personally fundamentally believe that this is a real opportunity for startups and investors and can create great benefit to them in terms of financial outcome, in terms of impact on the world, but at the same time, to really have a positive impact on the security of our societies. I know this is also why my good colleagues at the NATO Innovation Fund and many other such similar entities are working so hard as they are to do today, as well as many startups, investors, governments, and other facilitators around the world. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. I'm not saying this is all be wine and roses, money and opportunities. There are real challenges on the road. But they are manageable. And they're manageable as long as we cooperate, work together, and we have a clear intent in where we're going. And trust me, the benefits in terms of financial return, in terms of impact, and in terms of positive impact on the security of our society is so much worth all this effort. Thank you.
Thank you, Ari. Ari, could I maybe ask you to actually stay on stage? So, we've reached our first panel, focusing on building strong innovation ecosystems with national security. So, continuing on defense, security, resilience, we have reached today's first panel discussion. And to lead us, our moderator has an extensive leadership career across industry, government, and is currently focused on conducting research on dual-use innovations. So welcome the Director and Head of Innovation Management at Vinnova, Jenny Elfsberg.
I think I'm equipped. Yeah, thank you. Like your talk, Ari, thank you. So let's get our other panelists up on stage so we don't lose time in this important conversation. And please have a seat, guys. You don't need to stand up. So this panel, we're only going to have like 20-25 minutes. But I think it should be like an 11-course dinner because the extensive knowledge these guys have and background, I don't know how to be fair. But I'm going to make a quick introduction. It's not going to be fair, but it's going to give the audience a little bit of understanding why they should get connected with you afterwards. So Derek Henmotzo. Yes. So you are currently leading global partnerships at the DIU?
Yes, advising, yes.
Advising, yeah. And he's been, how should I summarize it? You make things happening in AI, defense, and global security with background in the US Army Special Forces, and also been at Apple, starting companies in Vietnam.
Yes.
And what else? Well, shaping how AI and emerging tech is transforming security. Is that fair?
Yes, that's part of it.
Yeah. More? You want to add something? Yeah.
That's it. Focus on global partnerships. So working with our allies and partners for the U.S. Department of Defense.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. And also background at Berkeley and West Point.
Yes.
Yeah. Good. Heather. So you're all about Heather Richman at BMNT. All about connecting people and mobilizing both people and money towards national security and international security, right? I think you've been working with all of the military arms on dual-use innovation. Yep. And also served at the White House. And what else? Oh, yeah, you were part of creating Elemental Accelerator as well, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Did I miss something?
I have 2 kids. That's
yeah.
like the hardest part. I'm a mom to teenage girls. That's really cool.
Yeah. Oh, my gosh. Yeah, that's the real work. Yeah. And Ari, I think you did a good introduction of yourself. Did we miss something? I watched a show with you where you said you were studying AI at Stanford before AI became cool. So really a visionary and a pioneer, right? So this panel, it's really about, we all know dual-use innovation is important for national security. We know startups need to get into government and all that, but can we make it happen fast enough? to matter. It's not like these 10 years that's the thing. And also, can we make it happen faster and also repeatedly or somehow systematically? So how can we build the ecosystems, the partnerships, the relations, and really get the answer to the need when the need is. So I'm going to ask you guys to help me, understand that a little bit more with your experiences. Who want to go first?
I'll go first. Ladies first, maybe?
Yeah.
My name's Heather Richmond. I'm based here down in Palo Alto, California. I've been here about 20 years. First of all, just thank you for being here. Thank you to Vinnova, to Jenny. Jenny and I have become very good friends over the last number of years. She does an incredible job. I'm kind of watching what's going on. First of all, this is something that Derek can't say, but I can say because I'm in the private sector. I'm so sorry for our president right now, and I'm sorry for everything that's going on. I know it's... I've been American for 50 years, and this is a new, fresh hell that we're all dealing with. And that's not a political statement. It's not about politics at all. This is just we're all, we're getting new things thrown at us every single day. And I think what I hope happens at the end of this 20 minutes is you guys feel a greater sense of calm, knowing that there are very normal, intelligent, successful people with good heads on their shoulders that are making sure that this doesn't go crazy. So please know that. I've got kids here, and I'm raising them, and they're watching this, and I have to explain what the hell just happened in November. So he has to be diplomatic, and I don't. So I think something that I'm watching as we're taking, DIU potentially, and it's something called, sorry about the acronym, CDAO, our
Chief Digital Artificial Intelligence Office.
Thank you. And the SCO, the SCO. We're taking a lot of things and combining them right now, a lot of innovation organizations. And so in my mind, and I give you guys all the credit, I just say they're creating a Vinnova. You guys have all your innovation in Sweden kind of in one organization, which actually makes a lot of sense. So there are some things that are going on right now that are challenging and unnerving, but maybe not as horrible as we might think. So give us a minute. We'll be back with you. But I think the reason I say all this is I've been for 20 years sitting on the outside of that. I was in DC, I worked as an appropriator a long time ago, but I've been in Silicon Valley really looking at the private capital side of things and building something called innovation at the speed of trust. Okay, so out in Silicon Valley here, we go real quick. And part of that is you have investors and entrepreneurs that have been working together for years and years and years. And who do you like to start new companies with? Who are you? People you trust, people you know. One of the challenges that we have inside of our government and our military is there's so much turnover. And so we've decided, a lot of us who used to be on the inside and people who were on the outside and have gone in the inside and will come back out eventually, we all know and trust each other. And so I think, I call it the mafia on the outside, but there are folks, that are educating new investors around, what Ari was talking about, kind of the defense, the security, and the resiliency. Those are very real terms, and kind of wherever you're comfortable in this, in this umbrella of defense. We're here for all of it. So I run something called the Defense Investor Network. It really was around FOCI and foreign direct investment, adversarial capital, removing that kind of money from mission-critical companies. We're talking about getting faster and moving faster, and instead of over-regulating that, why don't we just start talking to investors and actually showing them what the consequences are for acting inappropriately? It's a very low bar I set for our investors. I say, I'm not asking you to do good for your country, I'm asking you not to do bad for your country. It's really basic. But beyond that, we've now got the Defense Investor Network here in the US. Secretary Austin, our former Secretary of Defense, who was wonderful, set up something called the AUKUS Defense Investor Network, and there's been a lot of conversations about bringing something like this to the Nordic regions. I'm half Norwegian. I was there this summer. I was in Sweden this summer. There's a lot of innovation going on, and frankly, you guys do the primes better than we do. Your primes actually are dual use, which is amazing. So there's a lot that we have to learn from you as well, and I've really enjoyed getting to know your ecosystem and figuring out how we can all partner better and faster.
All right, well, I'll just speak to kind of picking up where Heather left off. But there's a lot going on in the news cycle. If you look at your phone, there's probably something that has happened since we've stepped up here. But just to give awareness on what we are doing, we are still focused on working closely with our allies and partners, not just government to government, but from the government to the commercial sector as well. So that's what the Defense Innovation Unit does and was stood up to do, was to accelerate the adoption of commercial technology for the Department of Defense at speed and scale, and we say at the speed of relevance, more closer to product life cycles as opposed to traditional government acquisition cycles. So you're thinking weeks to months versus 5 to 10 years, which is significant for a startup because you could start and kill a startup about 3 or 4 times in that time frame. So that's what we're doing, and even to underscore that, yesterday we met with the Wallenberg investment in Saab, representatives from Sweden, and we are working closely with our allies and partners in Europe as well as in the Indo-Pacific. So it's definitely a focus of ours, and really at the core of it is a process. I would say the Defense Innovation Unit's innovation is about the process of really understanding the commercial sector, building these bridges between the innovators and the investors, as well as really understanding the operational needs. If you only have the fluency on one and not the other, it's really hard to move quickly. It's really hard to get the right solutions, and it's also really hard to pay the right price. For the longest time, the US government has had people that have been focused primarily on government work make decisions that really should be done by someone that has been working with enterprise and worked in the commercial sector. So that is changing, and the dual fluency, as Heather brought it, I guess the mafia inside and out, the network, I would say, it is really become stronger, and it's also become stronger because of the state of the world. DIU was started about 10 years ago, before when things were really brewing, and then has really started to change its level and impact over the past few years. 2 years ago, DIU became a principal staff assistant, which means that we have direct line to the Secretary of Defense. And why that's important is that we can now work on the most important problems as opposed to work as disruptors within the department.
Yeah, that's a good thing. Thank you, Derek. So Ari, what do you say about this big question about speed, collaboration?
Yeah, no, this is very good, and it's actually it's nice to connect here with the DIU since we actually have one of your former colleagues there on the board of NATO Innovation Fund, and so the experience from there has helped guide us. And these are steps.
Let me just ask a question. You're going to continue soon.
Yeah.
So is that how it should work? Like people move around between these
Absolutely,
different... Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, keep going.
And that helps with the speed. And so we are seeing steps taken. I mean, we on the Innovation Fund we're doing it. The DUI is doing it. The DIU, sorry. Incutel, NSIF. There are a number of agencies and entities that are doing this. We see this especially in the allied nations that have borders with Russia, for example. They are working at a breakneck pace today to change things. That is all very good, but I don't think we all understand quite yet just how much speed we need. And one of the things that we are learning from the response in Ukraine to the Russian invasion is just how fast things happen. I mean, there is a technological race going on and has been going on for 3 years where a solution has to be up and running next week. Not a call for proposal goes out next year. And it isn't technology that can be sort of, slowly getting to the point where it's operational. If it is not operational right then and there, it doesn't work. It's put to the side. We try the next thing. And so the speed at which things are happening is really incredible. And that is one of the things that we have to also learn from what is happening in Europe at this time and in other places. So while we are seeing really good steps taken and to make government more responsive, to make us able to work more closely between government and the innovation industry, we should also notice that the pressure is just going to increase. We're going to have to work even faster together, be able to take decisions faster. And it's not just, I'm going to be absolutely clear, I'm not just pointing the finger at the governments. One of the things that also has to happen is that the innovators, the startups, they have to be ready to actually bring solutions to the table, solutions that work and operate, not something that is still a prototype. So there's a lot of pressure on us, but there's very clear that the desire, the willingness, and the effort is being spent to actually move us in the right direction, and that's good to see.
So one thing that you guys said, I'm thinking the fluency on both, like really making sure whatever solution is coming from a emerging tech startup, or not, maybe not even a startup, like a student, as in Hacking for Defense. Like how do we build that fluency? And I don't know, how should we make sure everyone understands how to get into the military market, removing roadblocks?
I think the first piece of it is signaling. So DIU has really changed the game here in the States, like completely. I was there when the ribbon cutting was happening and Ash Carter was talking about this vision. But I think really the idea is, defense typically hasn't been very transparent, we'll say. So understanding really, what does DIU, what are they looking for? And DIU is a rapid contracting mechanism that works with all of the different services and stuff. So they are across DoD. And they've really opened it up. They have you can talk about it, but they have a CSO, which is their rapid contracting vehicle, which is open to allied partners, right? That's new for us. And so we're trying like hell. My point, though, is when they have a CSO and they're putting that out, that's a signal to investors. It's a signal to entrepreneurs. This is a capability that our warfighters need. In-Q-Tel, which is the investment arm of the CIA, they also work, though, with other services. But when they put a small investment, it doesn't even have to be a big one, a small investment out there, they are then signaling to other investors and to entrepreneurs, these are capabilities that our warfighters need. So the more that your MOD can be signaling both to your investors and to your communities, but as well to ours, about things that you need, and that we can be building more effective pathways for you guys and your startups and your investors to get into our defense industry, because I think we're 30 times larger. We're big, and we have a lot of money, and even though we're cutting that, we're still very large. So as DIU is creating pathways into our industries and into our defense industry, I think that signaling piece is really important for students, for investors, for entrepreneurs. The more that we can get that out there, I think the better we're going to be.
Yeah, what I'll share is that dual fluency comes with, we've had, of course, a lot of operational experience over the past now 20 years. That's come, but I think now what's evolved is that there's been programs like Hacking for Defense, and there's also from the government side fellowships in various different companies such as Google, et cetera, that have brought veterans, so people with operational experience, to get that commercial side fluency. So I think having like a pathway to go back and forth, whereas before when I was starting out in the military, there really wasn't that. It was you're either in or you're not, and you might be a reservist, but it wasn't so much a fluid flow of program, and also kind of a head start of people that are serving to really have a way in as an intern. So I think those programs have developed where people have an interest to still serve. For example, I left active duty service to go to Apple, to go to startups. I was not putting on a uniform, and then I came back to put on a uniform after Russia invaded Ukraine, because the world was changing, and it felt very meaningful. Like when I started in the military, it was the year after 9/11, so it felt very similar to that, and there's a purpose. And I think there will be a purpose across the Nordics and society because of what's happening in Ukraine and really what's evolving with Russia. So I think that's part of where that dual fluency can come, and Vinnova is an example of bringing together these different individuals.
Yeah, super interesting. Ari, you want to add to that?
Yeah, I actually want to pick up on also a question that you interjected there, and it relates to what you've been talking about, which is this movement. I mean, I spent 16 years of my life here in Silicon Valley studying and working, and one of the things that has made this a powerhouse is the human capital and the fact that it moves around. And so it's considered completely natural to go from one company to another here. And I still remember I'd worked for NASA down in Moffett Field for about 5 years when somebody said to me that they were moving on and doing something else. And I asked, why? Are you not happy here? And I'm like, being in the same place in Silicon Valley for more than 5 years is just a freakishly long time. And it does bring something to the table. It brings understanding of different technologies, different verticals, different kinds of companies, different ways of approaching a problem. And it makes the overall capability of the population, of the experts, better than it would be otherwise if they didn't move around. And so we need to expand that to also include the government, to to also include the primes, to also include this larger society that can help impact this. So absolutely there. One thing I want to add to this also, because we sometimes talk about it, and it's very tempting to talk about, we need to get more people into the government, that they can come in and serve with the government for some time, come from the startup, work with the government, then go out again, etc. That's all true. But we also need the startup world and the investment world to step up also. We need a change in thinking. And let's just take the practice that we've had in the startup and the technology development community over the last 10, 20 years. We went from just working on the internet and the bubble and all of that hype back in the old days to actually contributing to fighting global climate change, to actually increasing sustainability. We also stepped up and helped out during the COVID pandemic to make our society function, to help minimize the impact and the damage from the pandemic. We now have to do the same thing as a startup, as startups, as innovators, as investors, step up and help keep our societies secure.
Fair enough. So it looks like we're over time, but I'm not going to open up for a Q&A session, because I really want to ask a last question that we need like 5 more minutes before we close for a break. Hope you're good with that. I mean, you can hook these guys up afterwards. So the question is, look at where we're at currently, looking at the news. What are we going to do to make transatlantic collaboration keep going, keep the dual-use innovation move fast enough to solve problems? Like, what are your advices from each one of you? You have a few minutes here.
I am super fired up, and I want to move to Sweden right now. Let's bring some people. No, I mean, as much as chaotic as our country appears right now, and it appears like that from the inside too. Trust me. Sometimes a little bit of chaos, really kind of rattles things up a little bit, shakes it up a little bit. So, and that's why I'm saying, there's a lot of great innovation around. There are a lot of really amazing people who have come back into government because we're like, what's going on? I think it's a really amazing time right now. I mean, it's wacky. You wake up every day and 9 more friends have lost jobs, and they're calling you up saying, "What do you got?" And it's difficult, but at the same time, we're kind of throwing it more. I think what's happening is, by reducing the size of our government, is what our president's trying to do. They're putting so much more pressure and onus on the private sector and saying, all right, get creative, like fill these gaps. And you know what? Our country's going to do it. Of course we're going to do it. We're not going to go down. I mean, we're not. Like, we might look a little shaky sometimes, but we're going to get there. But I think, it also then spurs, what's going on in Russia, what's going on in China. I mean, these things light a fire under people. It's definitely lit a fire under me. He joined right after 9/11. I was working for the senator from New York and was at Ground Zero 3 days after 9/11. Like, that's when you don't forget smells and you don't forget feelings and those things are happening again. It's different, but it's happening. And so take the excitement, take the rage, take whatever you've got, and focus it and put it towards something, where you're building solutions, where you're building relationships. I mean, this is an amazing event. And thank you all for being here, and thank you for inviting me to be here. And having these sorts of relationships, and you guys building relationships here, with the folks in the U.S. and bringing your folks in the U.S. And I understand that Vinnova is going to have, or FMV is going to have a fellow at DIU. Awesome. The more that we can get this cross collaboration and these ecosystems working together, and to start trusting each other and knowing each other, we're all going to be better off. And I'm still coming to Sweden.
Thank you.
I'll say this, we're not slowing down. I know that the news looks like, we're looking inward, but no, we're not. We're looking outward, and, we've brought a Norwegian uncrewed underwater vehicle, basically an unmanned submarine, on contract, and we're continuing to push outreach to our ally and partner nations to work with. And so we're not changing speed, and in fact, we're probably speeding things up. And what we're looking to do is speed up the other sections of our bureaucracy that have been slower. So I think that's the signal that we from DIU would like to share to the world and to our partners, that we're continuing work. Our budget increased about 9 times this past year. It'll probably stay similar, if not increase. And we're trying to just speed things up.
Awesome. You got something to say about this, Eric?
A little bit, yes. It's hard to deal with politics. It's hard to deal with when governments change. I mean, we have been having that experience in Europe as well. Maybe not quite as loud, as drastic as in this country over the last couple of weeks. But, I mean, we have had NATO allies that have really stepped outside of what has been the policy of the alliance. We've had Hungary doing its thing for a long time. We had just finished setting up the fund when two governments involved in the fund changed radically in terms of their political alignment. It doesn't change what the fund does. And I think it's the same thing for our community, our institutions that we work for, and all of this broader community. We don't change what we are doing. And if we look at what we've achieved over the last 10 years, 30 years, 50 years, in terms of technology development that has really changed the world, it's not because of what our politicians and what our governments say. It's because we work together as innovators, as startups, as investors, as communities to make things happen. And I said earlier that one of the things that is different about the 21st century is that we are in the driver's seat. We are still in the driver's seat. Let's use it, work together, and turn the world into the right direction.
That's quite a closure.